Hey guys, so today we're going to do a little something different and a little bit more fun. I want to see if my fantasy football team can win in the Super Bowl in Madden 20. To make it harder, I'm going to put the other 11 teams in my league into the simulation as well. So let's see who has the best fantasy team according to Madden 20. Before we start, please don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you enjoy it. It lets me know what kind of content you guys want to see. Also, if you do enjoy this video and want to see more videos like this, let me know down below. Whether it's rebuilds, what if scenarios, or even just challenges. Just leave them down in the comments and I'll make a video. So let's get started.
Eternity later.
Alright, that took a while. So what I decided to do was to put everyone's players on their defense. For example, I have the Bears defense, so I put all my offensive players and my kicker on the Bears roster. So let's take a look at the teams. I don't really know how to look at all the players in the beginning of the season, so let's just do it in the trade menu. Starting off with the Bears. At quarterback, we have Lamar Jackson. And I think it's just straight disrespectful how he's still a 79 overall, especially after what he's been doing so far. At running back, we have Saquon Barkley, Leonard Fournette. Wide receiver, T.Y. Hilton, A.J. Green, Allen Robinson, Alshon Jeffrey, Marquise Brown, and DJ Chark Jr. At tight end, George Kittle. Next up, we have the Bills. At quarterback, Deshaun Watson. At running back, David Johnson, Aaron Jones, and Austin Eckler, who's also been having a pretty crazy season. It's going to be interesting to see how they balance out Eckler and Melvin Gordon throughout the season. At wide receiver, Antonio Brown. I know he's not really on a team, but I decided to put him on just to make it a little bit more fun and interesting. Also makes it a little bit harder. We also have Tyler Lockett, D.D. Westbrook, Terry McLaurin. And at tight end, O.J. Howard. Next up, we have the Chargers. Russell Wilson at quarterback. McCaffrey, Freeman, and Carson being the running backs. At wide receiver, Sterling Shepard and Chris Godwin, who's also been having a pretty crazy start to the season, along with DK Metcalf. And at tight end, Evan Ingram. Next up, we have the Eagles. Carson Wentz gets to stay on his old team. Running back, we have Mark Ingram, LaShawn McCoy, and James Conner. Wide receiver, Odell Beckham, Stephon Diggs, Sammy Watkins, Mohamed Sanu. This is a pretty scary fast wide receiver trio right here. And at tight end, we have Jared Cook. Next up, we have the Jaguars. Dak Prescott at quarterback. Nick Chubb, Tarek Cohen, and Sony Michel, the running backs. At wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins and Keenan Allen, Robert Woods, and Courtland Sutton. And at tight end, Austin Hooper. Up next, we have the Packers with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. At running back, Kareem Hunt, who is suspended, but again, just to make it a little bit more interesting and fun, Joe Mixon and Damian Williams. At wide receiver, Michael Thomas, Tyrell Williams, Calvin Ridley, and Corey Davis. And for tight ends, Trey Burton and Darren Waller. Next up, we have the Panthers. At quarterback, the GOAT Tom Brady. At running back, Ezekiel Elliott and Devin Singletary. At wide receiver, we have Amari Cooper, Kenny Galladay, Josh Gordon, and MVS. And at tight end, we have Vance McDonald and Mark Andrews, who has also been having a pretty crazy start to the year as well. Next up, we have the Patriots, who has been killing it on defense. At quarterback, we have Drew Brees, again injured, but just to make it a little bit more fun. At running back, Derrick Henry, Breda, and Montgomery. At wide receiver, we have Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Larry Fitzgerald, Jarvis Landry, and Mike Williams. This is going to be a pretty hard wide receiver duo to stop in this simulation. And at tight end, we have Will Dissly. Next up, we have the Rams, Matt Ryan at quarterback, Gurley, Lindsey, and Ronald Jones at running back, Adam Thielen, Marvin Jones, Deshaun Jackson, Cooper Kupp, and Golden Tate at wide receiver, and Travis Kelce for tight end. Next up, we have the Saints with Phillip Rivers at quarterback, with Baker Mayfield backing him up, Alvin Kamara, Marlon Mack, and Jordan Howard at running back, Mike Evans, Emmanuel Sanders, Tyler Boyd, and Dorsett at the wide receivers. And for tight end, we have Zach Ertz. Next up, we have the tight ends. Kyler Murray at quarterback. Le'Veon Bell, James White, and Kerryon Johnson, the running backs. Juju, Cooks, Robbie Anderson, and Dante Pettis for wide receivers. And for tight end, Noah Fant. Last up, we have the Vikings. Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. And at running back, we have Melvin Gordon, who's finally back. Dalvin Cook, who's been having a crazy start to the season. And at wide receiver, Julio Jones, Julian Edelman, Michael Gallup, Randall Cobb. And then tight end, Delaney Walker and Greg Olsen. So let's sim to the end of the year and see where we are. But before we do that, why don't you guys let me know, who do you guys think will win? Will it be the Bears, me, or do you think maybe it will be the wide receiver duo of Tyreek Hill and Davante Adams? Or can you really ever bet against Tom Brady? Let me know down below. So now I'm going to sim to the end of the year and see where we're at.
2 hours later.
Okay, so I simmed to the end of the season. Let's see how everybody did. Let's take a look at the standings. 3 of the teams are actually in the same division right now. But leading the NFL was actually the Bears, 14-2. Packers, Bills were 12-4. The Rams, the Patriots, 11-5. Panthers and Vikings, 10-6. Titans, Jaguars, 9-7. The Saints were 8-8, as well as the Chargers. And I think that's it. So let's take a look at the stats. Woo, let's go Lamar. 4,470 yards and 43 touchdowns. And this guy's a 79 overall. Can't believe it. Rushing, Saquon Barkley with almost 1,600 yards and 15 touchdowns. Lamar only had 300. Receiving, AJ Green, almost 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns. Saquon also had 9 receiving touchdowns. Next up, we have the Bills. 4,000 yards and 29 touchdowns for Deshaun Watson. 1,200 rushing yards for David Johnson. And almost 1,000 yards for Antonio Brown. For the Chargers, 3,800 yards and 33 touchdowns for Russell Wilson. McCaffrey only had 570 rushing yards. Pretty disappointing. Receiving, Godwin led the team with 1,100 receiving yards. For the Eagles, almost 4,000 yards and 32 touchdowns for Carson Wentz. 1,000 rushing yards for LaShawn McCoy. And almost 1,000 yards for Odell Beckham. For the Jaguars, 3,500 yards and 31 touchdowns for Dak. 1,000 rushing yards for Nick Chubb. And a bunch of 700-yard receivers for the Jaguars. Next up, the Packers. 4,600 yards and 50 touchdowns for Patrick Mahomes. Pretty crazy. 1,300 yards for Joe Mixon. Kareem Hunt really didn't do much. Tyrell Williams and Trey Burton actually led them in receiving over Michael Thomas. For the Panthers, Tom Brady, 3,200 yards and 33 touchdowns. Zeke with 1,800 rushing yards. Pretty sure that's the highest we've seen so far. And Josh Gordon led the team in receiving with 840 yards. For the Patriots, 4,100 yards and 33 touchdowns for Drew Brees. Derrick Henry and Matt Breida led the team in rushing, 600. Receiving, there was actually 2 1,000-yard wide receivers in Jarvis Landry and Tyreek Hill. Davante Adams only had about 600. Pretty disappointing if you ask me. Now the Rams. 4,000 yards, 38 touchdowns for Matt Ryan. Gurley with almost 1,800 rushing yards. I think him and Elliott have been the top 2 so far. Receiving, Adam Thielen with 1,000 yards. Saints. Next up, the Saints. Phillip Rivers with 4,700 yards and 38 touchdowns. Kamara with 1,400 rushing yards. And another team with 2 1,000-yard receivers, Zach Ertz and Mike Evans. Tyler Boyd also almost had 900. Next up, the Titans. 3,800 yards and 27 touchdowns for Kyler Murray. Not bad for a rookie. Le'Veon Bell with 1,300 rushing. And Robbie Anderson led the team in receiving with almost 900. Last up, we have the Vikings. Aaron Rodgers, 3,500 yards and 27 TDs. Rushing the ball, Melvin Gordon, 1,300. And Randall Cobb and Julio Jones and Julian Edelman, all with 700-yard seasons. So let's take a look at playoff matchups. In the wild card, we're going to have Vikings versus Panthers, Patriots versus Chargers, and Packers versus Eagles. So let's sim ahead a week and see how it is. So the Vikings beat the Panthers, Patriots beat the Chargers, and Packers beat the Eagles. Now we're going to have Patriots versus Browns, Vikings versus Bears, Texans versus Bills, and Packers versus Rams. So let's sim ahead another week and see what happened. So the Browns actually beat the Patriots. They actually really don't have anyone on their team, so it's pretty interesting to see them go this far. The Vikings actually beat me. Kind of killed us, really. Bills killed the Texans, and Packers killed the Rams. So now we're going to have Bills versus Browns and Vikings versus Packers. Let's sim ahead another week and see who's going to the Super Bowl. Before we look at the Super Bowl, let's take a look at the yearly rewards. Patrick Mahomes actually wins MVP with Lamar Jackson right behind him, and Saquon. Pretty good year for the Bears. Very disappointed they didn't make it to the Super Bowl. Coach of the Year, the Bears, Matt Nagy. AFC Offensive Player of the Year, Josh Allen, Sam Darnold. Deshaun Watson is the only one in this experiment that made it up here. Defensive Player of the Year, Thomas Davis Sr. For the NFC Offensive Player of the Year, Patrick Mahomes. Also Saquon and Lamar Jackson right behind him. Again, I'm just going to say I'm very disappointed. So for the Super Bowl, we have the Green Bay Packers and the Cleveland Browns. I wonder who's on the Browns, because that's not even one of the teams. So let's take a look at their players. Cam Newton at quarterback, TJ Yeldon at running back, and Tawan Taylor at wide receiver. This team made the Super Bowl. Okay, so let's see who wins the Super Bowl. And the Packers win the Super Bowl. I can't really say I'm surprised after seeing that Browns team. Well, my fantasy team couldn't win the Super Bowl, and it was a pretty big upset if you ask me. But let's not try to be too salty about it. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and let me know down below if you want to see more videos like this in the future.